It is a curious thing to consider how the landscape remembers what the written record often forgets. In the quiet corners of the Western Reserve, there are stone walls now buried under ivy and dry creek beds that once turned the heavy wheels of industry. Their names now absent from the maps of the modern day. We walk upon the dust of those who saw these forests not as a sanctuary of silence, but as a boundless labor of felling, tilling, and enduring. Their sighs are carried in the wind that rustles the remaining oaks, a soft echo of a world that moved at the pace of a horse's gait and the steady rise of the sun. Welcome to the American Gazetteer. Tonight, we turn the pages of history back to Cuyahoga County, Ohio, in the year of our Lord, 1875. To understand the character of this northern reach of the Ohio country, one must first contemplate the great gray expanse of Lake Erie, which forms the county's entire northern boundary. In this season of 1875, the lake remains the dominant architect of the climate and the primary witness to the county's growth. It is a vast, unsalted sea that stretches toward the horizon, its waters shifting from a pale cerulean in the morning light to a deep, brooding slate when the northerly winds begin to stir. Along these shores, the land does not meet the water in a gentle slope, but rather in a series of sturdy bluffs and sandy ridges, which served the ancient peoples and the early pioneers as natural thoroughfares, long before the first surveyors laid their chains upon the earth. The northern breeze carries the scent of fresh water and damp earth, cooling the orchards that the Cozad and Doan families tended with such diligence along the higher ground. The county is bounded to the east by the rolling hills of Cuyahoga and the coastal plains of Lake County, while to the south lie the industrious lands of Summit and Portage. To the west, the border meets Lorain County, where the forests once stood so thick that a traveler might walk for a day without seeing the sky. The shape of the land is defined by the Crooked River, the Cuyahoga, which enters the county from the south and performs a great serpentine labor to find its way to the lake. This river has carved a deep and fertile valley through the center of the region, creating a dramatic contrast between the low, alluvial bottomlands and the high, breezy plateaus that flank it. The water moves with a deceptive stillness in the summer months, reflecting the overhanging willows and the limestone outcroppings that define its banks. The soil of Cuyahoga County is a varied tapestry, demanding much from the husbandman who seeks to harvest its bounty. Near the lake, one finds the sandy loam of the ancient beech ridges, a soil that warms quickly in the spring and provides a perfect cradle for the roots of peach and apple trees. Moving further inland, the earth becomes more resolute, turning to a heavy, cold clay that retains the moisture of the winter snows. This clay is a stubborn companion, yet when mastered with the plow, it yields a sturdy crop of wheat, oats, and hay. On the homesteads of the Huntington and Center families, the drainage of these lands was a constant concern, requiring the digging of deep ditches and the laying of stone drains to ensure the health of the grain. The richness of the valley soil, deposited over eons by the flooding of the river, stands in stark opposition to the thinner, rockier ground found upon the higher elevations of the southern townships. Beyond the major river, the county is veined with a multitude of smaller creeks and runs, each with its own quiet history. The Rocky River to the west and the Chagrin River to the east serve as the natural sentinels of the county's borders, their courses marked by steep shale cliffs and deep, shaded glens. In these secluded spots, the air remains cool even in the height of July, and the sound of falling water provides a constant, rhythmic backdrop to the rural silence. The timber of the region remains a source of pride and utility, consisting of grand specimens of white oak, black walnut, hickory, and the ubiquitous sugar maple. While much of the original forest has surrendered to the axe to make way for the pasture and the meadow, large woodlots remain, providing the fuel for the hearth and the lumber for the rising barns that dot the landscape of this tranquil year. To leave the quiet husbandry of the outlying townships and journey toward the mouth of the river is to witness the steady, dignified pulse of Cleveland, the jewel of the Western Reserve. In this year of 1875, the city is often called the Forest City, a title well earned by the venerable elms and maples that line its broad thoroughfares, casting long, flickering shadows upon the brick-paved streets. Cleveland sits atop a high plateau, looking out over the harbor with the watchful eye of a seasoned mariner. The air here is a mixture of the lake's crispness and the faint, industrious scent of coal smoke from the distant iron foundries, a reminder that the hand of progress is ever moving, though it does not yet disturb the tranquility of the residential squares. The heart of the city is the public square, a 10-acre sanctuary of green partitioned into 4 quadrants. Here, the monument to Commodore Perry stands as a silent sentinel, commemorating the naval triumphs of a previous generation. The gravel paths are meticulously kept, providing a space for the city's merchants and clerks to find a moment of respite beneath the boughs of the great oaks. Surrounding this square are the edifices of commerce and faith, built of sturdy sandstone, quarried from the hills of the county itself. The old stone church, with its weathered masonry and reaching spire, offers a sense of permanence amidst the shifting tides of the 19th century. On the neighboring streets, the commercial houses of the Kelly and Payne families stand as monuments to the region's growing prosperity, their windows reflecting the soft glow of the afternoon sun. Descending from the plateau, one finds the flats, the low-lying basin where the Cuyahoga River winds its final miles. This is the seat of the county's maritime soul. Here, the masts of schooners and the stacks of steamships create a forest of another kind. The lumber yards and grain elevators, managed by men such as the Winslows and the Hilliards, are busy with the transfer of the Midwest's bounty to the eastern markets. The sound of the river is a low, rhythmic churning, the creak of wooden hulls against the docks, and the distant whistle of a locomotive entering the station. Despite the industry, a sense of order prevails. The labor is measured, and the movements are purposeful, reflecting the stoic character of the men who work these waters. As you rest in the sanctuary of your own home, perhaps in a place far removed from these northern shores, consider for a moment the threads of history that bind your own dwelling to the earth. We are all, in a sense, temporary stewards of the land we inhabit. To remain with the American Gazetteer is to join a quiet society devoted to the preservation of these memories, ensuring that the virtues and the landscapes of our ancestors are not entirely eclipsed by the haste of the modern age. Moving eastward from the center of town, Superior Street and Euclid Avenue begin their elegant stretches. Euclid Avenue, in particular, is a thoroughfare of unparalleled grace, where the city's most successful citizens have erected their villas. These homes, often set back behind expansive lawns and wrought iron fences, are masterpieces of Victorian architecture, featuring Second Empire mansard roofs, Italianate brackets, and sweeping verandas. The Case and Perry families have established estates here that rival those of the Old World, surrounded by gardens where the scent of lilacs and peonies lingers in the spring air. The pace of life on these avenues is unhurried. A carriage might pass with the rhythmic clip-clop of hooves, but the overarching atmosphere is one of profound, settled peace. The infrastructure of the county seat is further bolstered by the presence of the great banks and insurance houses that cluster near Superior Street. These buildings, constructed of heavy masonry and adorned with classical columns, represent the financial stability of the Western Reserve. Inside, the scratch of quill pens and the ticking of regulator clocks provide the only soundtrack to the serious business of land speculation and agricultural credit. Yet, even in this center of finance, the influence of the rural county is never far away. The bankers often discuss the price of wool and the success of the wheat harvest with as much gravity as they do the fluctuations of the national gold standard. It is a city that knows its roots are firmly planted in the soil of the surrounding townships. Leaving the burgeoning spires of the county seat behind, our journey takes us along the northern belt of townships that cling to the jagged embrace of Lake Erie. Here, the influence of the Great Lake is most profound, dictating the very rhythm of the seasons and the success of the local husbandry. In Euclid Township, to the east, the land rises in a series of gentle, undulating ridges that seem to mimic the waves of the lake itself. These ridges, composed of the gravelly remains of ancient shores, provide an unparalleled drainage that the local farmers have turned to the cultivation of the vine. By the autumn of 1875, the hillsides are heavy with the scent of ripening Concord and Catawba grapes, their purple clusters hidden beneath broad, dusty leaves. The McElrath and Deal families, names long synonymous with the settlement of this soil, oversee vast vineyards that stretch toward the horizon, where the blue of the fruit meets the shifting gray-blue of the water. Adjacent to Euclid lies the village of Collinwood, a place where the stillness of the lakeshore begins to harmonize with the metallic resonance of the locomotive. While much of the township remains a sanctuary of quiet woodlots and sandy lanes, the presence of the Lake Shore and Michigan Southern Railway has introduced a steady, measured industry to the region. The homes here are sturdy and unpretentious, constructed of local timber and weathered by the damp, saltless gales that sweep in from the north. The Stockwell and Watterson households, among many others, maintain a balance between the labor of the rails and the traditional chores of the smallholding. In the evening, the lowing of cattle in the pastures near the tracks competes with the distant, mournful whistle of a passing freight train, creating a soundscape that is uniquely representative of this transitional era in American life. Further west, the township of East Cleveland offers a landscape of refined agricultural beauty. The Dewan and Cozad families, who were among the very first to break this ground, have established estates that serve as models of rural prosperity. Along the main thoroughfare, which follows the ancient Lake Ridge, the houses are set back within groves of maple and locust, their gardens blooming with the simple, hardy perennials favored by the Victorian gardener. The air in these orchards is cool and fragrant, filled with the industrious humming of bees and the soft rustle of leaves. It is a place where the passage of time is marked not by the clock, but by the blossoming of the fruit and the eventual turning of the leaf. Crossing the Cuyahoga and moving to the western reaches of the county, we find ourselves in Rockport. This township is defined by the dramatic cliffs that overlook the mouth of the Rocky River, where the shale banks rise nearly 100 feet above the swirling water. The landscape is more rugged here, with deep ravines and dense thickets of hemlock and cedar that have escaped the settler's plow. The Mastic and Alger families have long called this territory home, building their dwellings upon the high plateaus that offer a commanding view of the lake's vast, unceasing horizon. The life of the Rockport farmer is one of constant negotiation with the elements. The soil is thinner than that of the eastern townships, requiring a more diverse approach to husbandry, including the raising of sheep and the keeping of hardy dairy cattle. Finally, we reached Dover, the westernmost sentinel of the county's lakefront. Here, the land levels out into a broad, serene plain that seems to breathe with the rhythm of the lake. The farms in Dover are large and well-ordered, reflecting the meticulous habits of the Porter and Lilly families, who have tilled these acres for decades. The architecture of the region is characterized by the Western Reserve style. Simple, elegant white frame houses with green shutters and classical porticos, reminiscent of the New England villages from which many of these families emigrated. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon of Lake Erie, the entire township is bathed in a soft amber glow, and the only sound is the gentle, repetitive lapping of the waves against the shore and the occasional lowing of a cow in a distant meadow. As one travels southward, away from the tempering influence of the Great Lake, the horizon begins to lift, and the terrain assumes a more rugged, commanding character. The air grows noticeably cooler as the elevation rises, carrying the sharp, clean scent of hemlock and the damp musk of ancient stone. In Strongsville, the landscape is defined by a series of high, rolling ridges that offer a sprawling view of the valleys below. The town center is a model of New England sobriety, featuring a wide green surrounded by a schoolhouse, a sturdy meeting house, and several well-appointed dwellings. The Pomeroy and Whitney families, whose ancestors brought the traditions of Connecticut to this wilderness, maintain estates that emphasize the virtues of order and permanence. Their barns are filled with the heavy scents of cured hay and dried herbs, while their livestock grazes upon pastures that have been painstakingly cleared of the glacial boulders that once littered the earth. Further to the east lies Royalton, a township situated upon the highest ground within the county's borders. This elevated plateau, often referred to as the Highland of the region, provides a climate well suited for the cultivation of hardy grains and the keeping of dairy herds. The soil here is a resolute clay, yet it yields a nutritious bounty under the careful husbandry of the Edgerton and Royal families. The homes in this district are often constructed of heavy timber frames, designed to withstand the fierce winter gales that sweep across the open heights. Life in Royalton moves with a quiet, seasonal deliberation, governed by the communal labor of the harvest and the solitary meditations of the winter hearth. The sound of the wind through the pines is a constant companion to the inhabitants, a reminder of the wilder, untamed spirit that still lingers in the deeper woods. In the township of Brecksville, the land descends sharply into the dramatic ravines carved by the tributaries of the Cuyahoga. This is a region of profound verticality, where the traveler must navigate narrow, winding paths that cling to the sides of steep, wooded hills. The Breck and Rice families have long occupied this territory, establishing mills along the rushing waters of the creeks where the power of the fall is harnessed to grind the county's grain. The bottomlands are lush and verdant, protected from the harsher winds and providing a sanctuary for a variety of wild flora and fauna. In the spring, the valley floor is a carpet of wildflowers, while the autumn transforms the hillsides into a tapestry of crimson, gold, and deep bronze. The atmosphere is one of secluded majesty, far removed from the bustling commerce of the lakeside city. Moving toward the center of the southern tier, the township of Independence serves as a vital bridge between the agricultural heights and the industrial valley. The village is situated near the Ohio and Erie Canal, a waterway that continues to facilitate the transport of the county's subterranean wealth. This wealth is found in the vast deposits of sandstone that lie just beneath the surface, a stone of such quality and color that it is sought after for the construction of fine buildings across the nation. The quarries are places of steady, rhythmic labor, where the ring of the mason's hammer and the rasp of the saw provide a constant soundtrack to daily life. The Fisher and Gleason families, among others, have built their livelihoods upon this stone, creating a community that is as solid and enduring as the material they extract from the earth. Finally, we arrive in Solon, the easternmost of the southern townships, where the terrain softens into a landscape of tranquil meadows and gentle brooks. This is a land of quiet, unassuming beauty, where the primary industry remains the patient labor of the farm and the dairy. The Bull and Pettibone families maintain homesteads that are models of rural peace, characterized by neat picket fences and well-tended vegetable gardens. The pace of life here is slow and predictable, marked by the arrival of the weekly post and the gathering of neighbors at the local store. As evening descends, the shadows of the walnut trees stretch long across the clover fields, and the only sound is the soft, rhythmic chirping of crickets in the darkening grass. It is a fitting conclusion to our journey through the southern reaches of the county, a place where the spirit of the pioneer still finds a quiet and prosperous home. To journey westward from the valley of the Cuyahoga is to witness a transition from the bustling maritime corridors to a landscape defined by the ancient, rugged masonry of nature. The western townships of the county possess a character that is at once more solitary and more anchored to the literal bedrock of the earth. Here, the geography is dictated by the Rocky River, a waterway that lacks the commercial breadth of the Cuyahoga, but surpasses it in sheer, breathtaking drama. Its course is marked by deep, winding gorges where the sun struggles to reach the forest floor, and the silence is broken only by the rhythmic rush of water against stone. It is a region where the pioneer's axe found its match in the stubborn shale, and where the families who remained became as resilient as the cliffs they called home. In the township of Middleburg, the earth offers up a different kind of bounty, not of leaf or grain, but of the finest grit and stone. The village of Berea has become a center of global renown for its sandstone, a material so durable and fine-grained that it is sought by the master builders of the world. The quarries here are immense, echoing chambers where the labor of men like the Stearns and the Pease families has carved away the hills to reveal the gray and buff-colored treasures beneath. The air is often filled with the fine, clean scent of crushed stone and the low, resonant thrum of the massive saws. These quarries are not merely sites of industry. They are the literal foundation upon which many of the county's most dignified banks and churches have been built, standing as a testament to the endurance of the local spirit. As the river continues its northward journey toward the lake, it passes through the township of Rockport, where the banks broaden and the soil becomes a fertile companion to the water. The mastic and alger families, having settled upon these slopes decades prior, have established a tradition of husbandry that balances the yields of the orchard with the necessities of the pasture. The landscape is a patchwork of apple groves, cornfields, and sturdy timber stands that provide a windbreak against the lake's occasional fury. Here, the Rocky River is bridged by wooden structures of simple, honest design, allowing the passage of wagons laden with the season's harvest. The sound of hooves upon the wooden planks provides a brief, hollow percussion that echoes through the valley before fading once more into the rustle of the surrounding elms. To the southwest lies Olmsted, a township of quiet, rolling plains and exceptionally deep, dark soil. This area remains one of the most purely agricultural districts in the county, where the distractions of the city feel a world away. The Coe and Barnum families have transformed this former wilderness into a vista of orderly prosperity, characterized by expansive meadows of clover and timothy grass. The barns are massive and well ventilated, sheltering the heavy-bodied cattle that provide the rich cream for which the district is known. There is a profound sense of continuity in Olmsted. The fences follow the same lines laid down by the first surveyors, and the evening chores are performed with the same unhurried diligence that has defined this community since its inception. The western edge of the county is a place where the forest still feels present, even in its absence. Along the borders of Lorain County, one still finds slashings, areas where the great forest was recently felled, leaving behind massive stumps that the settlers must slowly, patiently remove. Yet, among these signs of transformation, there are groves of ancient hickory and walnut that have been preserved by the families as a source of winter fuel and autumn nuts. The stillness here is heavy and comforting, a blanket of silence that descends as the sun sinks behind the distant, wooded horizon. It is a land that rewards the patient and the stoic, offering a life of quiet dignity to those who are willing to labor in harmony with the rhythms of the earth and the river. To stand upon the northern wharves as the sun begins its slow descent is to witness the very heart of the county's maritime soul. The port is a place of grand transitions, where the sturdy, iron-willed industry of the land meets the boundless, shifting temperament of the Great Lake. In this quiet season, the harbor is a forest of towering masts and dark, slender smokestacks, all swaying in a slow, synchronized dance dictated by the gentle swells of Lake Erie. The water here is deep and restless, a reflection of the sky's changing moods, turning from a bright, shimmering gold in the late afternoon to a profound, ink-like indigo as the shadows of the warehouses lengthen across the piers. The air is thick with the evocative scents of the lake, the briny tang of fresh water, the resinous perfume of newly sawn lumber, and the faint, earthy aroma of iron ore waiting in great, silent mounds. Along the waterfront, the commercial houses of the Hanna and Rhodes families orchestrate the movement of the nation's wealth. Men in heavy wool coats move with unhurried purpose, overseeing the unloading of copper from the northern ranges and the loading of Ohio's golden wheat, destined for the hungry ports of the East. The sounds of the port are rhythmic and soothing. The low, musical creak of wooden hulls against the pilings, the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, and the cries of gulls as they circle the returning fishing boats. The air is thick with the evocative scents of the lake, the briny tang of fresh water, the resinous perfume of newly sawn lumber, and the faint, earthy aroma of iron ore waiting in great, silent mounds. Along the waterfront, the commercial houses of the Hanna and Rhodes families orchestrate the movement of the nation's wealth. Men in heavy wool coats move with unhurried purpose, overseeing the unloading of copper from the northern ranges and the loading of Ohio's golden wheat, destined for the hungry ports of the East. The sounds of the port are rhythmic and soothing. The low, musical creak of wooden hulls against the pilings, the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, and the cries of gulls as they circle the returning fishing boats. Further along the lake shore, away from the industrial clamor of the river's mouth, the landscape softens into the elegant promenades of the city's northern edge. Here, the lake breeze is a constant, cooling presence, rustling the leaves of the stately elms that line the coastal bluffs. The families of Cleveland's merchant class, such as the Gordons and the Kellys, have established retreats here that offer a breathtaking view of the water's expanse. These estates are characterized by sprawling lawns that roll down toward the beach and wide, shaded verandas where one might sit and watch the white sails of the yacht club flickering like distant ghosts on the horizon. It is a place of refined tranquility, where the grandeur of the lake is matched by the quiet dignity of the architecture. As night begins to drape its velvet mantle over the county, the lakeshore transforms into a world of silver and shadow. The rhythmic lapping of the waves against the shore becomes the dominant sound, a timeless heartbeat that has measured the passage of centuries. The lights of the distant ships appear as fallen stars upon the water, moving with a slow, hypnotic grace toward their moorings. In the homes along the shore, the lamps are lit, casting a warm, inviting glow through the windows and onto the darkening lawns. The harbor, once so full of the movement of trade, now settles into a profound and restorative silence, a sanctuary of peace for the weary, and a place of quiet reflection for those who remain to watch the stars rise over the great lake. To journey eastward from the city is to leave behind the alluvial silt of the river valley and begin a slow, dignified ascent toward the great plateau known as the Heights. This rising ground serves as a natural balcony for the county, offering a perspective that is both lofty and serene. The air here, stripped of the lake's dampness, carries the sharp, resinous scent of cedar and the sweet, heavy perfume of the chestnut forests that still crown the ridges. In this season of 1875, the ascent is made via the old plank roads and gravel thoroughfares that wind their way upward, passing through the cluster of dwellings known as Doan's Corners, where the transition from urban industry to rural husbandry begins in earnest. The township of Euclid, reaching far into the eastern hills, is characterized by its deep, rugged ravines carved by the Euclid Creek. The water here moves with a spirited haste, tumbling over ledges of blue shale and sandstone as it hurries toward the lake plain. Along these banks, the Gates family established their mills, harnessing the kinetic energy of the falls to process the timber and grain of the surrounding highlands. The sound of the creek is a constant, rhythmic presence in the lives of those who dwell here, a liquid percussion that echoes through the narrow valleys. The soil upon the slopes is varied, ranging from a stubborn, stony clay to pockets of rich, dark earth, where the Warren and Mayfield families have established thriving orchards of plum and pear. Upon the crest of the heights, the landscape levels into a broad, breezy tableland that has become the preferred retreat for those seeking the restorative virtues of the country. The Prentice and Severance estates are situated here, their grand houses constructed of local stone and timber, surrounded by lawns that seem to merge seamlessly with the edges of the wilder woodlots. The pace of life on the heights is governed by the slow, predictable movements of the sun and the stars. In the evening, the view to the west is one of unparalleled majesty, as the sun sinks behind the distant, smoky silhouette of the city, casting a long, golden trail across the gray waters of the lake. It is a place of profound silence, where the only disturbance is the occasional call of an owl or the rustle of a deer moving through the undergrowth. Further to the east lies the township of Mayfield, a region of quiet, pastoral beauty where the industry of the farm remains the primary focus. The land here is rolling and well-watered, featuring numerous small brooks that feed into the Chagrin River. The families of this district, including the Sherwins and the Whites, have spent generations clearing the dense forests of maple and beech to create the vast, emerald pastures that now define the horizon. The dairy herds of Mayfield are renowned for their quality, their lowing providing a gentle, reassuring soundtrack to the rural day. As nightfall approaches, the lanterns are lit in the barns, and the smell of wood smoke begins to rise from the chimneys of the farmsteads, signaling the conclusion of another day of honest, unhurried labor. It is a world that remains anchored in the traditions of the early century, a sanctuary of peace in a rapidly changing world. As one travels 4 miles eastward from the city's public square, the cobblestones of the urban center give way to the rhythmic, hollow drumming of the Euclid Avenue plank road. This thoroughfare serves as the vital artery connecting the metropolitan pulse to the serene, cultivated landscapes of East Cleveland. Here, the air is distinct, cleansed by the lake breeze, and sweetened by the vast nursery lands that dominate the horizon. The landscape is a testament to the patient husbandry of the Ford and Cozad families, whose sprawling acres of young fruit trees and ornamental shrubs create a mosaic of verdant green that stretches toward the rising ridges of the south. The village of Colliwood, nestled within the broader township, serves as the spiritual and social anchor for the eastern settlers. It is a place of profound architectural sobriety and New England charm, centered around the sturdy frame of the Presbyterian Church. The houses here, belonging to the Crosbys, the Posts, and the Duans, are characterized by their cleanliness and order, featuring white-painted siding, dark green shutters, and deep wells that provide the cold, clear water of the Western Reserve. Life in Colliwood is measured by the tolling of the church bell and the seasonal arrivals of the stagecoach, which still makes its dusty way along the post road, carrying news from the eastern states. The conversation at the general store often dwells upon the health of the vineyards or the promising price of wool, reflecting a community deeply rooted in the rhythms of the earth. To the south of the village lies a place of quiet, monumental beauty, Lakeview Cemetery. Established only a few years prior, it has already become a site of pilgrimage for those seeking solace and reflection. The grounds are a masterpiece of Victorian landscape design, where the rugged topography of the Euclid Ridge has been softened into a series of winding paths, tranquil ponds, and shaded glens. Here, the city of the dead mirrors the garden city of the living, with ornate monuments of granite and marble rising among the ancient oaks. It is a place where the Giddings and Wade families have prepared their final resting spots, overlooking the vast blue expanse of Lake Erie in the distance. The silence here is heavy and respectful, broken only by the occasional song of a wood thrush or the soft crunch of gravel beneath a mourner's carriage. The industry of East Cleveland is not found in the roar of the furnace, but in the quiet, persistent growth of the nursery trade. The soil, a rich, sandy loam deposited by the ancient lakes, is a perfect cradle for the cultivation of delicate flora. Every autumn, thousands of young trees are carefully dug, packed in damp moss and prepared for shipment to the expanding orchards of the West. This labor provides a steady, dignified livelihood for the local youth, who learn the art of grafting and the science of the soil beneath the watchful eyes of the elder husbandman. As the day ends, the workers return to their modest cottages, the smell of damp earth clinging to their clothes, while the sun sets behind the Euclid ridge, casting a long, protective shadow over the nurseries and the quiet homes of the village. To enter the township of Bedford in this year of 1875 is to encounter a landscape defined by the rugged, melodic descent of Tinker's Creek. This waterway, the largest tributary of the Cuyahoga within the county, has carved a spectacular gorge through the sandstone and shale, creating a series of cataracts that are as industrious as they are beautiful. The village of Bedford sits atop the plateau, a collection of sturdy frame houses and brick storefronts that serve as the commercial heart for the surrounding hill farms. The air here is often filled with the distant, muffled thunder of the falls, a reminder of the raw power that the Comstock and Egbert families first harnessed to turn the saws and stones of their early mills. The geography of Bedford is one of dramatic contrasts, where fertile rolling uplands give way to the sheer vertical walls of the creek's glen. The soil upon the ridges is a strong, productive clay, favoring the growth of wheat and the maintenance of extensive orchards. On the homesteads of the Benedict and Robinson families, the harvest is a time of intense but orderly labor, where the golden sheaves are gathered under the watchful eyes of the red-tailed hawks that circle the thermal currents rising from the gorge. In the depths of the glen, the climate is noticeably cooler, a sanctuary of ferns and rare wildflowers that cling to the damp, shaded rock faces, hidden away from the heat of the summer sun. The industry of the township remains inextricably linked to the cataracts. Along the banks of the creek, small manufacturing concerns produce chairs, woodenware, and flour, utilizing the gravity of the falling water to power their machinery. Unlike the great foundries of the city, these shops are intimate and seasonal, their output governed by the volume of the spring rains and the autumn's flow. The Taylor family, long known for their craftsmanship in wood, maintains a shop where the scent of fresh shavings of maple and hickory mingles with the damp mist of the nearby rapids. It is a world where the hand of the artisan is still the primary mover, and where the quality of the work is a matter of personal and family pride. As evening settles over the cataracts, the township of Bedford retreats into a profound, liquid silence. The village lamps are lit one by one, reflecting in the windows of the inns that once served the travelers of the old Cleveland and Pittsburgh stage route. The roar of the falls becomes a background hum, a lullaby for the households that have spent their day in the service of the land and the loom. To listen to the water at this hour is to feel the weight of the years. The knowledge that these falls have tumbled through the dark long before the first cabin was raised, and will continue their descent long after the names of the present day have faded into the quietude of the archive. To reach the easternmost boundary of the county is to enter the valley of the Chagreen River, a region where the geography is as poetic as its name. Here, The land is more fractured and intimate than the broad plains of the west, characterized by steep, wooded ravines and sudden hidden glens where the water runs clear over beds of ancient pebbles. In this year of 1875, the valley remains a sanctuary of traditional husbandry, largely insulated from the iron clamor of the city. The air is cool and fragrant with the scent of pine and damp moss, and the light filters through the dense canopy of elm and oak in soft golden shafts. It is a landscape that invites a slower pace, where the passage of a mile is measured not in minutes, but in the unfolding beauty of the terrain. In the township of Orange, the hills rise with a gentle but insistent dignity. The soil is a rich, productive loam, nurtured by the many small tributaries that feed the Chagrin. The Bentley and Otis families have established homesteads here that are models of 19th-century self-sufficiency, featuring large, multi-story barns and neat kitchen gardens. The primary labor of the season is the tending of the dairy herds and the cultivation of the high meadow hay, a crop that is prized for its sweetness and nutrition. Life in Orange is defined by the communal spirit of the neighborhood, the shared labor of the barn raising, the quiet exchange of seeds, and the steady, rhythmic movement of the scythe through the tall grass. Further south, the township of Warrensville offers a landscape of serene, rolling plateaus. This area has long been a center of religious and social reflection, known for its orderly farms and the presence of the Shaker community near its northern border. The Hutchinson and Warren families maintain estates that emphasize the virtues of simplicity and permanence, with houses built of sturdy timber and stone. The atmosphere is one of profound, meditative silence, broken only by the tolling of a distant bell or the rhythmic lowing of the cattle in the evening air. The roads are lined with stone walls that have stood for half a century, a testament to the patient, persistent labor of the generations that have called this high ground home. As our journey through the county concludes at the very edge of the eastern line, we find ourselves in the quiet hamlet of Chagrin Falls. Here, the river performs its final, dramatic act, cascading over high ledges of sandstone in a series of white, foaming curtains. The village is built around these falls, with the homes of the pioneers clinging to the steep banks. The air is filled with the constant cooling mist of the water and the rhythmic thrum of the mills that still operate along the lower reaches. As the sun sets, the falls are illuminated in a soft, ethereal light, and the entire valley seems to settle into a restorative peace. It is a fitting end to our travels, a place where the wild beauty of the river and the steady industry of man meet in a quiet, enduring harmony. Rest well.